In this video, we are going to see a few awesome ways of using callback refs, which can be pretty powerful sometimes. So let's get started. Right now, you have seen this setup. So essentially, a name is passed in this component, greeting component, and that name is printed. And if you remember this change name, if you click, then name used to change, and that is implemented here. Essentially, whenever you click, then it essentially in a round robin fashion gives these names one by one. Okay, so yeah, that is how it is. Now let's say our requirement is that when this thing is printed, then I also want to print, let's say below, width of what is this, how much is this width. So let's say I change the name to Charlie, then this width is like more, right? So yeah, width essentially I need to paint. So for that, firstly, what width I'm talking about, let me show you. So this P thing, this P tag, I think where I did the color red, there I already have it here. So I'm talking about this thing. So let's say border is 1 pixel solid purple. So essentially this thing, but I don't want the whole width. I just want width till here, whatever is the content. So I can say that width is fit content. So yeah, this is the thing. So this width I want. How to get this width? Now we know that if I have any div properly defined, then I can have a this client bound rect, if you remember, right, in one of the videos we used. So we can use that to calculate the width, but for that we need a DOM reference, and we know that we can get DOM reference, right, using hooks, using useref. Okay, so we can have a reference. You can have this name, you can have anything. Anyways, let's use my ref, and you can use ref where you can initialize it with null, and you can pass it here. So ref is equal to this my ref thing. Yeah, so now you have this. Now what we can do is that in the we can have a, so essentially when this thing is rendering, after render, this my ref will have that reference. So you can clearly see it here also. So let's say I have a use effect. Inside that if you print simply, let's say my ref dot current, then you'll clearly see that, yeah, you will get this tag reference, p tag reference, right? But what is our purpose? Our purpose is not to just print it, rather our purpose is to get client bound rect dot width, and we know that it contains width, right? So this will essentially give me the width, and let's have a variable w, and then somehow we need to print this here, let's say here. So let's have a div which has width w, or let's say call it width. What we are going to do is that we'll take this width as a variable in some state variable. Okay, so we'll use width, set width, and this is essentially just a state. Okay, and this is going to have let's start it with 0. That is fine, right? Okay, and then we will set width here. So whatever the width is coming out to here, that is fine. And yeah, so we don't have any external dependencies. Actually we have, but we'll see that soon. What is the issue? Just comment it for now, and we'll see that, yeah, that width is 0, but as soon as it is mounted, then I'll calculate the width and I'll set that width, right? So I'll set that width, and then you can see the width. So this much width is this many pixels, right, at 8.8 pixels. That is fine, but you see that when you're changing name, this width is not changing. And what is the cause? The cause is that yeah, so this props dot name, actually whenever this thing is changing, then your this thing should also change, right? This thing should change means this essentially this effect should run again. That is the whole point, that whenever the only variable thing is props.name. Whenever the props.name will change, then my this width is going to change, the render width, right? So I need to run my effect so that my set width is set to the latest value. But for that I need to have a dependency of this. Now you might think that, yeah, so props dot name is not used here, right? But then also you are using it as a dependency array. Yeah, so that is what indirect dependencies are there, right? So we discussed in one of the earlier videos also that sometimes this might happen, because React cannot figure out what are the actual dependencies. So sometimes you might want to do it manually when it is not that much clear. Otherwise React will give you warning if some unused variable is there, then they'll suggest you to add that here. But here is the way where only we can suggest to React cannot suggest to us. Okay, so now with this you'll see that, yeah, now this is working fine. In fact, you'll see that this thing is 88 4 characters, and let's say this is Bob, this is 86 characters, and this is Charlie, so 112 pixels. So you can see that this thing is working perfectly fine. Yeah, but this is not what we intended to do in the first place, right? Initially we told you how that there are some powerful ways to use callback refs. Okay, so what about callback refs? Now we know that instead of using this, first of all, we might need to do this later, but firstly see how to use callback refs. In callback refs, let's do something like this. Rather than doing it like this, let's simply print my ref. Okay, so we'll see that, yeah, we are get and my ref, my ref dot current. So we'll see that, yeah, we are getting that element reference. That is fine for now. But there are other ways to do it, right? If you remember, we had this syntax of callback ref where you can take an element which is essentially it is called with, and then current the reference dot current is el, and now essentially this myref will be initialized with null, and later when this thing will be called, then you will set it to the actual DOM reference, and this will work exactly the same way. You'll see still you're getting the reference of the p tag. That is fine, which means that if you do all these, this will still work, right? Okay, so yeah, this still works, but that is not the point. We are trying to do something else. See what we are trying to do. What we will do is that, first of all, for simplicity, because this function is going to be long, I'm going to add something to it. So rather than defining it inline, let's use it in a variable. So let's say callback ref is equal to this callback ref is there, and I'm using callback ref here. So anyways, exactly the same thing, nothing else has changed till now. You can see that still it works perfectly fine, just that I have moved it to a separate variable, sorry. Anyways, now let's do something. So again, this is just a one-liner, so I can write it like this also. But why I'm writing like this? Because now I want to do something more. So let's print el here. Let's comment this for now, and let's print el here. You'll see that this thing is printed. That is fine. More importantly, if you change the name, then you see that again 2 times this thing is printed. Why is that? Because we already know this feature. Whenever a particular, so first of all, this callback ref is created every time, right? Whenever this is created every time, so whenever this is rendering, your callback ref is changing. Then it replaces the callback ref. When it replaces the callback ref, it firstly calls the previous callback ref with null, and then it calls the new callback ref with uh, new reference, whatever, el. Okay, so that's what it is happening, and that's why whenever you change some value, for that matter anything, whenever this component is re-rendered, this thing is being called again and again. Okay, now we can take advantage of this to do some interesting things. See, the first thing I can do is that I know that whenever my EL is changing, whenever I am getting, whenever this thing is, well, first of all, whenever this whole thing is rendered, then every time this thing will be called, because that is how it is. Like this callback ref is created every time this whole component is rendered, right? So every time this thing is done, so irrespective of whether props.name is changing or not, every time I am getting this call two times. And what do you mean by two times? One time with null and one time not with null. So if el, which means that when it is not null, then let's do. But apart from this, we can do some more interesting things also, something like this. You can see. So what I can do is that instead of my ref.current, or you can like either you can replace this by el, or you can do something like this, that firstly do this and then do this, but exactly the same thing, right? So this thing is essentially just the el which we got, and then we got the width and set it. Okay, so now if you see, then even if we have removed this use effect, okay, so essentially let's vanish all existence of that, and then we'll see that it works perfectly. So now you can see the power of callback ref, that we are, even if we are not using any use effect or something, then also this thing is working perfectly fine. Okay, however, there are some corner cases which we'll see one by one. The first thing is that okay, isn't this thing running time and again, every time this thing is created again and again? So you might be tempted to use callback. So you know this thing is like unnecessarily created every time again and again. So let's put it in use callback. So let's try doing that. So use callback, inside that let's put this, and there is nothing which is dependent on this, right? No variable. So let's do this. We refresh, we get here, and now we are in trouble. You can see that this thing is not working now. The reason is again the same, that this callback is just running at mount. After that, whenever props is changing, this thing is not being called, and why, and that React cannot figure out on its own, right? So you have to essentially give that dependency. Okay, and now you see that it is giving an additional warning that, you know what, unnecessary dependency. Well, it is not unnecessary. So you can see that in use effect it was smart enough to not give warning, but now it is giving warning. So yeah, anyways, you can let it be, and now you can see that it starts working as expected. So this is fine. Okay, so yeah, you can keep it like this, or there are ways to remove this warning. So what you can do is that, see, this linting tools will give you this warning name, that this is the warning name. So what you can tell is that you can tell ESLint not to show this not to show the warning for this line. So that you can do by doing ESLint hyphen disable line, and then the error name. Even if you change some character, then also it will start giving warning. You can see that properly this error name should be there, and that I copied there, right? So it will work like that. So now you can see that this is working. More importantly, whenever my this thing is changing, name is changing, then only this thing is running. You can prove that by doing this thing. So let's say just print el. You'll see that whenever my prop.name is changing, then that is running. But try changing this thing, this n, and you can understand that whenever I click this a new value of this thing, n is passed, which means that it is rendering again and again. But then also this callback is not this callback ref, sorry, essentially this thing, yeah, the callback ref, that is not running, not running, right? And why is that? That is exactly because of this thing. If I did not provide this, then you can see that whether I change this or I change this, in both cases it is re-rendering, right? So this is essentially and again, if you are using callback, use callback and not giving any dependency array, then there is no point of using use callback, right? Because every time it will again create again and again. So either you remove that altogether, you remove that thing, or you keep it like that. That is fine. But if you don't want to write this whole unnecessary, not unnecessary, but if you don't like this whole big thing, then you can remove the use callback and dependency array altogether, and it is fine. It is fine, you can do like that. Just that sometimes unnecessarily this callback will be running. For example, even if, when props dot n or something, this thing is changing, then also it will be running. Other than that, and that's not a big deal, right? So other than that it is absolutely fine. Okay, so that should be fine. Okay, that looks completely okay. Now let's see one more thing. What we have seen is that this thing is rendering again and again. Let's take a hypothetical scenario where I'm saying that no, this thing will run only when props.name is not equal to Alex. If props.name, this thing, if this thing is Alex, then it should not run, which means that if it is not Alex, then only I should run it. I should run it means I should print that thing. Okay, so you can see that, yeah, initially nothing is there because it is Alex, so nothing should be there. If my name is the props.name that is passed is not Alex, then everything is working fine, right? But here is the problem again. When Alex came, then it is disappeared, that is fine, but width again is like last width, right? Unless you get the new width. So yeah, Charlie set the width to 112 pixel, that is fine, but as soon as it vanished, I did not reset it. And that is where you might be remembering that why this callback ref was called twice. That was called twice to handle this sort of scenarios only. So I know that when a new reference is coming, then it will come as some like non-null value, that is fine. But we know that else condition, else condition will be when we will get null. Or you can do something like el is equal to null, then do this, otherwise do this. That also you can do. But the point is that now essentially el is equal to null. Okay. Now what we can do is that if el is null, then we can simply set width to 0. Okay, because that is what it is. When this thing is unmounting, then I should reset the width to 0, and then something is mounting, then please set it back to whatever the width is there for the new name. Yeah, so now you can see that this is Bob, Charlie, and when we go back to Alex, it is disappeared, but width is also 0. So now you understand that this callback ref thing is very powerful. And yeah, so for normal use cases, you can simply use normal refs, and a bit of things you can do using use effect. But if you use this powerful version of callback ref, then you can understand that you can get away with in fact that use effect and something, and most of the things you can do directly here, where you have much more control over actually when the things are mounting, when the DOM is when the React is attaching or detaching a particular DOM element or something. So there you have hooks to do more fine-grained things. Okay, so that should be fine. Now if you observe closely here, this myref reference is only used here, right? So I believe that you can straight away do something like this, and then you will not have need of this, and you can remove this also, right? You can remove it from here also, and now you will see that it's working exactly the same way. However, it's just that this width 0 we are not showing, so let's remove that thing. That thing is not needed now. It's from, I think, one of the previous examples. So right now you can see that, yeah, we can change and the width is coming fine. Okay, so this is fine. Now let's say you have a similar requirement. Let's say you have to repeat this logic again, which means that let's say there is some another component, some another p element, something like this, and let's say here let's say something like this is there. Okay, now the problem is that this is completely different element, right? So its callback should be different. In fact, its width will be also different. So this is, let's say, width 2, width 1. Okay, now the problem is that how to do this. So you might think that, yeah, we already did for this thing, for first one. Similarly, we will do this for the second one also. The problem is that now you have to again redo the whole logic, so there will be chance of code duplication, and that is what we want to avoid, right? This thing is working fine, but again we don't want to duplicate the logic. So let's do one thing. Let's create a our custom hook which will have this part, and what it can do, let's say function custom use, it has to be use client rect. Okay, in this we'll see that whatever things are needed. So what do we have to return? Definitely we need width and callback ref. Okay, so we need width, we need callback ref, and yeah, props is not defined. So what you can do is that you can pass props here. That should be fine, which means that when I'm going to use client rect, then I'll rather directly use this. So for example, this thing, and here whatever things I have passed, I can use that. You can use another variable names, other names also, because it is just array elements, right? You can use any name. But now you understand that essentially this is a custom hook which in which I passed this props, but after that essentially this is a separate entity in itself, where I am maintaining this separate state for a particular call, and after that I am in particular returning a callback function. Okay, and that callback function, callback ref, whatever this callback ref function, that thing is essentially being used here, and now width can be directly used. Okay, so let's see how it works, and we will see that it works perfectly. Yeah, but now what's the advantage? The advantage is that I can just duplicate it and use it again. So I'll use something like, let's say this is width 1, this is width 2, this is okay, cbref1, this is cbref2, whatever I can use, right? So 1 1 2 2. Okay, and now you will see that these two are completely different, and both the calculations are being done separately, because now both the variables and callback, these are coming from completely separate hooks. Like if you are using a custom hook 2 times, which means that these two are two separate instances of hooks, and obviously they share the logic. If you saw the earlier video on custom hooks share the stateful logic but not the state itself, right? Which means that the stateful logic is same, but when I called it 2 times, then both of them have separate independent states of their own. Okay, so that's how it works. So yeah, now I believe you have a fair idea about this, how we can do something like this. So yeah, that will be all for this one. Thanks a lot.